The first scream was cut short by static. On the wideband broadcast flooding every comm channel, the trade station Asterion, the image of a bound figure jolted into focus. A human diplomat, their face bruised, their voice silenced by a jagged claw pressing against their throat. Behind them loomed the alien captors, the Dravari, gray-skinned, spined, with eyes like polished obsidian. They filled the frame with the confidence of predators. "This envoy is now ours," their commander hissed. "Surrender your experimental FDL designs, or their life is forfeit. You have 3 rotations." The feed cut to black. Silence hung in the command chamber. Captain Reina Alvarez was the first to speak. Her voice clipped and even. "They think they've got us." She stood tall, hands braced against the tactical table, eyes sharp beneath the cropped edges of her black hair. Years in the fleet had carved her into a figure people instinctively looked to, solid, measured, unyielding. Beside her, Dr. Arun Patel muttered, pushing his glasses higher up his nose, though they never seemed to sit straight. "Of course they think that. Hostage-taking works for them. Works for plenty of species. But," his hands danced, restless, as if already rearranging the room's furniture into some contraption, "they don't understand us." "They don't understand much of anything," Zoe Kim said softly, perched cross-legged on a console, as though she'd wandered in from another story entirely. She wore paint stains like badges across her sleeves. A mural she'd finished only yesterday still gleamed on the station's mess hall wall, bright swirls of stars colliding into impossible flowers. "They see fear and expect obedience. They don't see what lies beneath." From the far corner, Jax let out a snort of laughter. He leaned back in his chair, boots propped against the wall, the permanent smirk on his scarred face daring someone to challenge it. "What lies beneath, huh? I'll tell you. Bad ideas and worse plans. Lucky for us, I'm an expert in both." Reina's glare cut across the room, but Jax only raised his hands in mock surrender. He'd been dragged onto this team because of his knack for slipping through places no one else could reach. Whether he could be trusted once he got there was another matter entirely. Still, she needed them all. The hostage wasn't just any envoy. It was Ambassador Lien Chun, Earth's lead negotiator with 6 alien coalitions. The Dravari had chosen carefully. By every political measure, Chen's life outweighed the lives of everyone else on Asterion. That was precisely why Reina knew they couldn't give in. "We've seen their kind before," she said. "Empires that think leverage is stronger than resolve. Their betting will fold because every other species they bullied has folded." She looked each of them in the eye, her voice tightening. "They're wrong. Earth doesn't break." Patel exhaled through his teeth. "That's an inspiring speech, Captain. But unless inspiration can cut through a Dravari hull, we'll need more than resolve." "I've got more than resolve," Reina said. "I've got you." Patel blinked, then gave a reluctant smile. "So no pressure." Zoe slid down from her perch and paced toward the hollow table. Her eyes lingered on the frozen image of Chun, captured mid-breath, terror half veiled by dignity. "If we try to solve this the way everyone else does, negotiations, concessions, we'll lose. They've written the script. We need to write something different. Something strange enough to catch them off guard." "Strange I can do," Jack said, leaning forward. "I know every dirty corridor and forgotten hatch on this station. I know who to bribe, who to scare, and who to trick. Hell, I can trick people without even trying." "That much is obvious," Reina muttered. He grinned wider. Patel tapped his fingers on the table, already chasing ideas. "I can rig drones, sensors, maybe even the waste recyclers. Nothing fancy, but enough to create noise. Give us cover, distractions, misdirection. Humans do improvisation better than any species I've ever studied." Reina felt the pulse of momentum building. They were still a mismatched handful against an empire, but mismatched didn't mean powerless. It meant unpredictable. "They want to play chess," she said. "We'll play jazz." Zoe smiled at that, a quiet, knowing smile. Improvisation as resistance. "I like it." Before the moment could settle, the comms flared again. Another transmission from the Dravari. The same obsidian-eyed commander filled the display. "You have ignored our demand," the alien said, his voice dripping disdain. Understand this. Humans are fragile. One life loss will be but the beginning. Comply or watch them suffer. The feed cut once more. Jax whistled. Well, they got bedside manner. I'll give him that. Reyna straightened, her decision iron in her chest. No concessions. We won't hand them the keys to our future. We'll get you back another way. Patel rubbed his temples. You realize this is the part where I should remind you how reckless this is. And yet, Zoe said softly, you're already planning how to make it work. He sighed. Unfortunately, yes. Jax kicked his boots off the wall and stood. Then it settled. We're going to steal a hostage back from a warship crawling with spiky lizards. Sound like fun. Reyna allowed herself the ghost of a smile. Not fun. Necessary. We don't win by being stronger. We win by being impossible to predict. She leaned closer to the table, her voice dropping, deliberate and sharp. Get weird. The words hung in the air, absurd and electric. Patel chuckled despite himself. Zoe's eyes gleamed with something like reverence. Jax cracked his knuckles. And for the first time since the broadcast began, the team felt the weight shift. Not away, not yet, but enough. Enough to believe the Dravari's mistake wasn't taking a hostage. It was assuming humanity had only one way to fight back. The station's central hub was a mess of noise and motion. Traders shouted in a dozen languages. Security drones buzzed along their patrol routes, and the ever-present hum of the reactors echoed to the metal bones of Asterion. It was a perfect kind of chaos, unpredictable, teeming, alive. Humanity's kind of place. Captain Reyna Alvarez stood at the edge of the market ring, scanning the crowd as if it were another battlefield. The Dravari think they control the board, she said quietly, her voice carrying just enough for her team to hear over the din. They don't realize the board's already tilted against them. You mean tilted in our favor, Jax corrected, weaving a coin through his fingers with effortless dexterity. You say tilt, I say opportunity. Same difference. Reyna shot him a sharp look, but she didn't bother to scold. Jax was useful precisely because he saw opportunity where others saw instability. Dangerous, but useful. Patel had already vanished into crowd, a satchel bouncing at his side, his eyes wide with the anticipation of invention. Reyna tracked him briefly, noting the way he ducked into a recycler's shop and emerged moments later with 3 stripped-down circuits and a coil of tubing. He was a scavenger of ideas as much as materials. Zoe lingered close, her gaze fixed not on the people but on the walls, the stalls, the symbols etched or painted or hung across them. She absorbed details like an artist before a blank canvas. They don't see us, she murmured. The Dravari, not really. They see what they expect to see. But if we can make them look differently, you planning to beat them with interpretive dance? Jax asked. Maybe, she said, deadpan. It worked for the protesters on Ganymede. Reyna almost smiled. Almost. Hours later, their makeshift war room looked less like a military command center and more like a bizarre art installation. Patel's drones, cobbled together from spare parts, hovered unevenly in the air, their carapaces painted by Zoe in bold streaks of color. Wires dangled like streamers. One emitted a soft hum that kept drifting into the tune of an old Earth pop song, though Patel swore he hadn't programmed it. These aren't weapons, Jax said skeptically, nudging one drone as it wobbled past. They don't need to be, Patel replied, adjusting a circuit with tweezers. They're distractions. Noisy, unpredictable, and irritating enough to make a guard patrol look the wrong way at the right time. Annoyance is strategy. Jax grinned. Now you're speaking my language. Zoe was busy sketching designs across a display pad, her fingers smudged with digital ink. She tapped to enlarge one sketch. A mural of blazing suns, human silhouettes marching to the fire. Art isn't just decoration, she said. It's communication. Aliens interpret symbols differently, but they all notice them. If we paint the station with signals the Dravari misinterpret, they'll spend more time decoding than acting. You want to graffiti our way out of this? Jax asked, incredulous. Not graffiti, Zoe said calmly. Psychological misdirection. Reyna cut him before the argument could spiral. Whatever we call it, it's better than sitting still. We don't outgun them. We outthink them. She leaned forward, her tone sharp. Dravari fear certainty, so we give them uncertainty. The first test came that same night. Patel's drones buzzed through the docking bay, their paint glinting under harsh lights. They weaved in erratic patterns, singing in mismatched tones that echoed against the steel. A squad of Dravari soldiers followed, claws raised, trying to sweep the machines from the air. The drones scattered like startled birds, luring the soldiers into chasing shadows. From the shadows above, Jax dropped into the bay's maintenance shafts. He landed without a sound, slipped past the distracted guards, and planted a relay note against the bulkhead. His voice came crackling into the team's comms a moment later. Relay is up. Path into Dravari's ship is wide open. Back in the hub, Zoe unveiled her first mural. It stretched across the bulkhead opposite the Dravari's quarters on the station, a blazing human figure reaching into a sea of alien stars. The brushstroke seemed random to human eyes, but to the Dravari, whose language was heavy with pictorial symbolism, the mural resembled a challenge, a declaration of dominance. Sure enough, within an hour the Dravari commander stormed into the hall, flanked by guards, demanding to know what the primitive mammals were plotting. Reyna watched from a concealed perch, satisfaction curling at the edges of her mouth. But the victory was short-lived. The Dravari retaliated with another broadcast. The image of Ambassador Chin filled the screens again, their face pale but defiant, a claw pressed tighter against their throat. You waste time with foolish gestures, the commander snarled. Humans claim resilience, but you cannot mask your weakness forever. Yield, or this envoy will pay the price. Reyna's jaw tightened. Around her, the others fell silent. Even Jax's smirk faltered. Then Chin did something unexpected. Despite the claws at their neck, the ambassador lifted their chin, eyes fierce. "Don't you dare!" they rasped, their voice faint but clear. "Don't you ever bargain for me. You know better than that." The feed cut. The silence afterward was different. Sharper, heavier. Reyna spoke first. "Chin knows what's at stake. They're stronger than the Dravari think." Her eyes swept across her team. "Which means we need to be stronger too. No more half measures." Patel rubbed at his temples. "If we push harder, they'll tighten security. Getting to Chin won't be a matter of distractions anymore. It'll be walking straight into a trap." "Then we spring the trap," Jack said. "On our terms." Zoe's gaze was distant, thoughtful. "They're trying to make us play their game. But what if we make them play ours?" Reyna felt the decision crystallize inside her like a blade of ice. The Dravari believed fear was leverage, but fear wasn't leverage when it hardened into defiance. Humanity had 1,000 ways to turn vulnerability into creativity, weakness into ingenuity. That was what the Dravari had never learned. She stood, her voice steady. "We're done with tests. We've mapped their patrols, we've rattled their nerves, and we've made them overconfident. Now we take it further." Patel looked up sharply. "You're saying—" "Yes." Reyna's eyes blazed. "We're going in." The words dropped like stones into water, rippling through the team. Patel's hand froze mid-adjustment. Zoe's stylus stilled over her sketch. Jax's smirk returned, wider than before. "Finally," he said, "I was starting to think we'd never get to the fun part." Reyna ignored him. She leaned closer to the hollow table, its projection flickering with outlines of the Dravari flagship. "We got one shot to steal Chin out from under their claws. No hesitation. No surrender. We use everything, drones, art, tricks, whatever Patel can build, and whatever Zoe can dream up. And Jax." Yeah, he drawled. "I'll find the back door." Reyna exhaled, steadying herself. Then it settled. The Dravari wanted us to fear the hostage. Instead, they've given us the reason to fight back. Her gaze hardened, a promise in her words. "Tomorrow we take Chin back." The Dravari flagship loomed against the black like a blade, its hull etched with jagged patterns that caught the light of the nearby gas giant. Docked against Asterian's outer ring, the ship radiated menace even at rest. From the shadows of the service corridor, Captain Reyna Alvarez studied the schematics Patel had projected onto her wrist display. "We get in through the maintenance ducts, cut across the lower barracks, then up through the central spine." Chen's cell is here. She pointed to a blinking red icon buried deep within the ship. Minimal margin for error. They'll expect us to try the obvious entry points, not this. That's because the obvious entry points don't look like garbage disposal chutes, Jack said cheerfully, tightening the straps of his utility harness. Lucky for you, I have extensive experience crawling through places people would rather avoid. Zoe raised a brow. I don't think that's the compliment you think it is. Patel muttered something about regretting every life choice that had led him to this moment, but he followed Jackson to the chute all the same. Raina went last, sealing the hatch behind them. The passage was narrow, lined with stale-smelling conduits and faintly pulsing cables. Their movements echoed faintly, though Patel had rigged a dampener to muffle most of the noise. Every few meters, he adjusted a sensor or clipped another piece of improvised tech to the walls. What does that even do? Jax whispered as Patel pressed a tiny device onto a panel. It interferes with their thermal scans. Does it work? I don't know, Patel admitted. But it should. Jax grinned. That's the kind of confidence that gets me up in the morning. Raina cut off further banter with a gesture. The ducts narrowed, then opened into a grating overlooking the lower barracks. Below them, rows of Dravari soldiers dozed in half-suspended rest pods. Their armor gleamed in the low light, weapons stacked neatly nearby. Zoe leaned closer, her eyes following the rhythm of the pod's rise and fall. They're breathing in unison, she whispered, like a chant. If we move on the offbeat, they won't notice the vibrations. Patel stared at her. That's absurd. It's also true, Zoe replied simply. Raina tested the pattern herself. An inhale and exhale, like the slow tide of a dark ocean, against her better judgment. She trusted Zoe's instinct, timing their descent to the cadence of alien breath. They slipped silently across the chamber, the soldiers oblivious. They reached the next corridor without incident, though Patel was sweating bullets by the time they crawled out of sight. I can't believe that worked, he muttered. I can, Zoe said. Patterns speak louder than words. Jax gave her a theatrical bow. Remind me never play card with you. The deeper they moved, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls here were marked with jagged sigils, pulsing faintly as though alive. Dravari culture was everywhere, severe, rigid, carved in stone and steel. Raina felt it pressing down on them, the weight of an empire built on intimidation, which made the small absurdities of humanity all the sharper. At one junction, Patel's drone swarm zipped ahead, their off-key hum echoing through the hall. A pair of Dravari guards stopped to investigate, snarling at the malfunctioning equipment. When one drone suddenly blared the chorus of a centuries-old Earth pop song, the guards actually recoiled, confused and disgusted. Jack slipped behind them in the commotion, disabling their weapons with a grin. Never underestimate the power of bad music, he whispered into comms. Raina shook her head but allowed herself the faintest smile. Humor was their armor against the darkness. At last they reached the central spine. A wide chamber stretched before them, bathed in harsh red light. In the center, caged within shimmering energy fields, was Ambassador Chun. They looked worn but unbroken, sitting upright, their eyes locking onto Raina the instant she appeared. Even across the distance, Raina felt the ambassador's resolve like a beacon, but the moment of relief was short-lived. The chamber doors slammed shut, sealing with a hiss. Sirens wailed. From hidden alcoves, Dravari soldiers emerged, weapons raised. And from the far side of the chamber, a towering figure stepped forward, the Dravari commander who had spoken on every broadcast. His voice reverberated through the hall. Predictable. You cling to your hostage like every other species before you. You believe one life is worth risking many. It is your weakness. Raina raised her chin, her pulse steady despite the trap. No, it's our strength. We fight for each other. That's something you'll never understand. The commander bared rows of jagged teeth. You will break, human. Patel leaned toward her, whispering urgently. We're surrounded. We can't fight through them. Raina's mind raced. Weapons wouldn't save them here, but unpredictability might. She glanced at her crew, Patel clutching his satchel of half-broken gadgets, Zoe with paint still smeared across her fingers. Jack's flashing his reckless grin even now. Tools of chaos, every one of them. Then we don't fight through, she said quietly. We make a new fight. Zoe's eyes lit up with sudden understanding. Patel blinked, then swore under his breath, already rummaging for parts. Jax cracked his knuckles. The Dravari commander took another step forward, savoring what he thought was inevitable surrender. "Kneel," he demanded. "Show me your fragility." Instead, Reyna straightened, her voice hard as steel. "Get weird." The chamber exploded into chaos. Patel hurled a cluster of drones into the air, their circuits overloading in a spray of sparks and discordant noise. The holographic mural Zoe had tagged earlier on her way in, hidden symbols painted in ultraviolet across the walls, flared to life, disorienting the Dravari soldiers with symbols that screamed challenge and insult in their own language. Jax darted into confusion, seizing the guard's weapon and firing into the ceiling, sending shards raining down like shrapnel. Reyna drew the soldiers' attention with calculated precision, every movement designed not to kill but to confuse, to fracture the rigid formation they relied on. And through it all, Chen's eyes shone with fierce, unbroken defiance. For a heartbeat, it worked. The Dravari stumbled, blinded by symbols, deafened by drones, rattled by the sheer absurdity of the humans' attack. But the commander recovered quickly, his roar silencing the chamber. The energy cage around Chen flared brighter, and the soldiers regrouped, weapons locking onto the intruders. "Enough!" he thundered. "You think chaos will save you? It only delays the inevitable. Humans will learn the meaning of despair." The team froze, the fragile balance teetering on the edge. Patel's drone sputtered. Zoe's murals dimmed. Jax ran out of stolen ammunition. And Reyna realized they had reached the knife's edge, the moment between collapse and triumph. The Dravari commander's roar reverberated through the chamber, shaking dust from the ceilings. Around him, soldiers closed ranks, their armor clattering like iron waves. The chaos the humans had sown, drones buzzing, murals flaring, weapons clattering the deck, was already fading beneath the weight of order. Captain Reyna Alvarez stood in the eye of the storm, her chest heaving. The trap had snapped shut, but she refused to show fear. Fear was what the Dravari fed on. Fragile, the commander sneered, his obsidian eyes fixed on her. Predictable. You make noise, then you die. Reyna's answer was calm, almost amused. You don't know us at all. Her gaze flicked to Patel. He was crouched beside his half-empty satchel, fingers trembling, sweat running down his forehead. One last invention, or nothing. He caught her look, and though his voice cracked, his words were steady. "I can rig an overload. Enough to short the field, maybe blind their sensors too. But it'll burn everything I've got." "Do it," Reyna ordered. Zoe had gone still, her eyes scanning the chamber with the focus of an artist before a blank canvas. Then she pressed her hands against the floor, smearing the last of her paint across the deck in long, deliberate strokes. The pattern looked meaningless, until the light from the drones hit it, bouncing into Dravari's harsh sigils on the walls. The symbols twisted, reshaping, telling a new story. Not a human weakness, but defiance rising from fire. The soldiers faltered, confused, their disciplined rhythm breaking. Jax seized the moment. "Now that," he said with a grin, "is art I can work with." He dove into the disarray, fists and stolen blade moving with the improvisational grace of a street brawler. His laughter rang sharp as he disarmed one guard, then another, his reckless joy cutting through the tension like a spark. The commander roared again, striding forward, massive claws snapping through the light. He swung for Reyna, who sidestepped just enough, drawing him closer to the energy cage. "Patel," she shouted. Almost, sparks burst from the scientist's hands as he jammed his last circuit into the field's control panel. "Now!" The cage sputtered, flared, then collapsed in a shower of blue light. Ambassador Chin stumbled free, bruised, exhausted, but unbowed. They didn't hesitate. They grabbed a fallen guard weapon and leveled it at the nearest Dravari. "Did you really think," Chin rasped, "I'd sit and wait to be saved?" For a heartbeat, the humans and their freed envoys stood shoulder to shoulder, chaos erupting all around them. And then the commander struck. He lunged with impossible speed, claws slicing toward Reyna. She barely dodged, the blow carving deep grooves into the floor. His voice was a snarl of fury. "You will break." Reyna's response was a single word, barked with absolute conviction. "Never." Patel's overloaded drones chose that moment to detonate. Not in a fireball. The scientists hadn't built bombs, but in a blinding storm of light, sound, and electromagnetic disruption. The chamber became a kaleidoscope of noise and color. Every sensor scrambled, every eye blinded. Zoe's mural blazed brighter under the distorted light, filling the room with the illusion of fire consuming the walls. To the Dravari, it looked like their own ship was turning against them, symbols screaming mutiny in a language older than their empire. The soldiers broke first. Discipline shattered into panic as they stumbled back, clawing at their helmets, shouting over the interference. Reyna seized the opening. "Move!" Together they surged through the chaos, Jax cutting a path with stolen weapons, Patel dragging Chin toward the exit, Zoe painting new signals across bulkheads to mislead any pursuers. Reyna kept them tight, every step calculated, every retreat deliberate. The commander followed, bellowing with rage, swinging blindly through the storm. But his soldiers didn't rally this time. Humanity's chaos had cracked their certainty wide open. They spilled back into the maintenance ducts, breath ragged, alarms wailing behind them. Patel sealed the hatch with his last tool, sparks showering his hands. Jax leaned against the wall, grinning despite a bleeding cut across his cheek. "Not bad," he said. "Though next time, let's pick an enemy that doesn't scream like a dying thunder lizard." Zoe wiped her paint-smeared hands against her trousers, her face pale but glowing with fierce satisfaction. They won't forget what they saw, even if they pretend they didn't. Chin straightened, battered but unbroken, and fixed Reyna with a steady gaze. "You disobeyed the easy choice," they said. "You refused a bargain. That's why we're still here." Reyna inclined her head, exhaustion threatening to drag her down, but pride holding her steady. They thought taking you would make us fold. They thought fear was enough. But Earth doesn't break. We adapt. We create. We fight back in ways they'll never understand. For a long moment, silence hummed between them, filled only by the hum of the ducks and the distant alarms. Then Jax broke it, as always, with a grin. "So, drinks on me when we're home." Patel groaned. "Assuming we survive getting home. Have a little faith. Document." Zoe's smile was quiet, almost serene. "Faith isn't what saved us. It was stubbornness, and maybe a little pain." Reyna chuckled, low and rough, the sound surprising even herself. Whatever it was human, and that's enough. They emerged back into Asterian's docking bay just as the Dravari flagship disengaged, retreating into the void. No triumphant proclamation, no final threat. Just silence and the undeniable truth of defeat. Humanity hadn't surrendered. Humanity hadn't broken. And word would spread. Reyna watched the alien ship vanish into the dark, her crew battered and stained but alive at her side. "This isn't the end," she said quietly. "They'll be back. Others like them, too." Chin nodded, their expression resolute. "Then we'll show them again. As many times as it takes." Jack slung an arm around Patel's shoulders, ignoring the scientist's sputtering protest. "Hey, at least we know the formula now. Step 1, get weird. Step 2, don't die." Zoe laughed, the sound clear and bright, echoing through the bay. "Step 3, she added, leave something behind that makes them question everything." Reyna let the laughter wash over her, rare and fragile but real. She knew the fight wasn't over, not for them, not for Earth, but they had proven something tonight, to themselves and to the galaxy. Hostages might cow other species, not humans, because Earth didn't break. Earth adapted.